Buenos dias, Fraser, and thank you for joining us today at Business Spotlight Series. Today, I'm excited to introduce Fraser MacLean, Managing Director of MH Carriers. Welcome, Fraser.
Buenos dias, Javier.
Very nice accent.
Thank you. It's not my best, but yeah.
So, Fraser, you are the managing director of the most prominent distribution company in the north of Scotland. You specialize in the distribution throughout Scotland and in the UK with depots in Aberdeen, Argyll, Dundee, Inverness, and Perth. You are running a very successful business. And my first question to you is, how do you end up doing what you're doing?
Not with having a definite plan to end up doing what I'm doing, that's for sure. If you'd asked me if I was younger, would I end up doing this, I would have said no. But really, I suppose the simple and quick answer is I kind of went to university to move away from a small village in Scotland to a big city. Left university, having been at business school at Strathclyde, wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but had summer jobs working in warehousing and logistics industry, and took a graduate job in that sector. I worked through various corporate jobs for a number of years, and then I got the opportunity to buy into a business in 2010, which I did, which was a big change for me, going from having worked into corporate businesses to a family business. Grew my equity stake in that business, sold it in 2015, worked for the people who bought it for a few years, and then bought into another business in 2019 and have been running and growing that business since then.
That's brilliant. So, couple of things. Before we were talking about school, you did say you were not, top end of the students, not bottom. You were kind of in the middle, right?
Yeah. I think that there's certain kids at school that are straight A students because a lot of school stuff, rote learning, and just bang, can you remember it? Can you repeat what you've learned? Kind of thing. Whereas a lot of the things I've learned in life have been for playing in football teams or leadership stuff from that. And yeah, academically I was good, but I wasn't ever the top student. I wasn't the bottom student either, but I wasn't the top. And I think that's kind of, I've always accepted that I've got good other skills as well. It's not, and a lot of the kids that were straight A's at school, I look at them now and they've not really been as successful, because I think if you come from a small school or a small village where you're the top dog, and then you go to a big city and realise you're not that important, a lot of people can't handle that. Whereas if you weren't and you go, you think, well, this is the same. So it's kind of your ego's used to it.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, there are many business people I've interviewed that either they dropped out of school and they are running hugely successful companies. Richard Branson, an example of that, very successful businessman, and surrounded by executives who help him run the business. No, definitely. That's great. Now, you mentioned about opportunities. When I looked at your profile in LinkedIn, you've obviously had a number of jobs and you've kind of been climbing up. And tell us about the thing of seeing opportunities. And I heard you say before, okay, I couldn't let this go. And I just went for it.
So basically, I'd done a lot of different jobs as a graduate trainee with BOC, then worked in various roles in Hayes, which were more planning and then running contracts. And I worked at Business Post or UK Mail as a depot manager, then an area manager, then a regional director. And when I was 34, I got the opportunity from a supplier who was wanting to retire to come into the business. And he said to me, "You're the right age." My son was a year old. It was a big risk to sell my house or my flat and move up to the Highlands of Scotland to do it. But I thought to myself, I'm only probably going to get one chance at this. So my wife was very understanding and said, okay, let's do it. And we went for it. It was a huge risk. But it was also the opportunity really to have a go. And I thought, I'm young enough, if it goes wrong, I can recover. But once you get the opportunity, it was really, you got to take it. If I'd passed on it, I think I would have regretted it my whole life. My grandpa was a plumber, and he told me that after the Second World War had finished, he had the opportunity to buy into a business, and he didn't take it because he didn't quite believe that he could do it, and he regretted it his whole life. And he told me, that he did regret it. So I kind of thought, okay, I don't want to be sitting here telling my grandson that I regretted it. So went for it.
Great lesson and great insight, which it resonates with me because I was in a very similar situation when my dad offered me to go abroad to study. and a family member got the same opportunity and he didn't go and I did go, and it's an amazing thing when you grab an opportunity. You mentioned about the family. Your wife was very understanding, so it helps, when you are taking a risk, that the family supports you.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's especially when you're moving away from your family support network. So to move up to the Highlands of Scotland, we had no family, no connections, nobody here. So you don't have people on hand to help you with childcare or with it. It was move and up sticks and reroute. And it's a beautiful part of the world to live in, but it is remote. And that was a big change. So she had to put up with most of the downsides, if you like, because I'd be at work trying to grow and build the business. So I couldn't have done anything without her doing the family stuff and being able to do that. So I think sometimes with entrepreneurs and with people who run businesses, you need that support network behind you. Otherwise, you'll just fail, regardless of how talented you are. So I've been very fortunate to have somebody who has been very supportive with that side, because without that, I think you would struggle to do anything.
There's this phrase of all that says, behind every successful man, there is a successful woman.
Well, see, I've heard that phrase a lot, and I rephrase it and say, in front of every successful woman is a very lucky man.
I like that.
So I actually think that it should be the other way around.
Yeah, brilliant. And then I guess when you're taking a chance, you have an opportunity which is risky, the big unknown, will it work out? I think a great question to ask yourself is, what is the worst that could happen?
The worst that could have happened is I could have lost all my money. I could have had to move back to the Central Belt with my tail between my legs, saying that I'd failed. But then on my deathbed, I could have said, well, I died trying,
Correct,
So I think it would have been the stigma of the failure that would have been the worst part for me, having had a successful career up to that point. However, I think you've got to kind of go through life saying that you tried and had a go at it. So that was my rationale. And also because I'd worked in the industry and I had a good grounding and I understood what was needed, I understood the industry I was going into, I think that was important to me. I'm not one of these people that could just say, oh, I'm going to open a restaurant tomorrow. I know nothing about it. Let's just go and do it.
Yes.
I'm more of I've worked in that. I know the industry. I know how it works. I was almost backing myself, if you know what I mean.
It's a calculated risk, definitely.
Yeah.
And the second question I love is, what is the worst that could happen? And then the second question is, could I live with that? Could I live with that?
It's a very hypothetical question, because until it goes wrong, you wouldn't know. But I think I could have lived with it, knowing that I had tried and failed. But it would have been very, very painful experience, I think. And I think it would have haunted me, in all honesty.
Yes. Now, I mean, Nelson Mandela, one of his famous phrases is, I never fail, I either win or learn.
Yeah. I'm not really like that, because I'm quite a binary person in terms of win, losing. I think that comes from sort of sport. Like when I played football, I didn't enjoy winning. I just hated losing. So I think that's my kind of mindset, which isn't healthy. And I wish I wasn't like that, but it's kind of very honest.
Fraser, what about this one then? You cannot win if you are not prepared to lose.
Well, I like the one where Bill Shankly said about Liverpool supporters, if you're not here when we're losing, don't turn up when we're winning. Because I think when you run a business, you learn more about people when it goes wrong than when it goes right. And there's nothing like that feeling of when it's gone all wrong and you're all there till all hours working hard and whatnot. And then when it goes right, you all look at each other and think, yeah, because we were here when it was going wrong, and we worked hard and we got there. And I think that you've got to understand failure and you've got to understand what's going wrong, but you've got to fix it quickly before it becomes terminal. So I like to think that it's that kind of thing. Don't be here when we're getting beat. You know, if the people that are there when in a football team, if you've watched your team lose 9 times out of 10, it means more when they win,
Yeah.
because you've seen the defeats and you've suffered the pain. So
Yes.
I think that business is a bit like that. That I like that feeling of, you know, we're all in it together. We win together, we lose together.
We win together.
Yeah, and we win together, because when
Yeah.
we do win, it's a satisfying feeling. And I think in a business of our size, that isn't a big corporate, you know, I know that none of my management team are absolutely perfect. They have good points and bad points. And what I've learned over my career is you try and play to their good points and try and deal with the issues that they can't deal with as well as their good points, rather than focus all the time on the things they can't do. If they can't do the job, that's a competency issue or a capability issue that you need to deal with. But people are people, and they're better at some things than others. And if you can focus people on their strengths, they'll run through brick walls for you.
Yes. Yes. Now, you mentioned about failure. We've talked about failure, success, and my question is, what is failure anyway? I was talking to somebody who said, failure is when you stop trying.
Yep.
It's like to achieve success, you have to have a number of failures. You trial and error. It works. It doesn't work. You tweak it. It works. Doesn't work. You tweak it. Tweak it. It's when you stop trying that you can consider a failure. But otherwise, it's just evolving to. That's why I agree with Nelson Mandela's phrase, which is I either win or learn.
Yep.
As long as you keep trying. So yeah, it's an interesting.
That's very true. The problem in running a business is if you run out of money, you failed. So, you know, you don't want to have some kind of vanity project.
Contextualize.
Well, I'm getting a little bit better every day, but I'm running out of cash. So, whilst your point is absolutely true, there's also a practical side that when you're running a business, you can't ignore, which is you want to make sure you can pay all your staff at the end of the month, and you want to make sure that the fundamentals of why people come to work are adhered to, if you like. So, yes, the phrases and the kind of expressions are great, but there's also a reality that you need to.
Yes, they are great, but also they are
far away from
empirical. Yeah, they are empirical because there are many successful business people who have had a number of failures.
Yes, but there's also some sort of serial entrepreneurs that I wish they'd stop trying a little bit, because they take in a lot of money from people, lose it all, and you think, who keeps giving them money? They're mad. And they're sort of seen as industry disruptors, and I just think they don't understand the industry. So but that's me being negative. I think the majority of people I meet that are you know, running their own business know what they're doing. They know their business, they know their industry. And there's an unfashionableness to that in a way, because you're seen as kind of a bit of a one-trick pony, I suppose. But that's normally fine. That's normally what makes a success, is they know what they're talking about. Whereas where I've found people who run 7 or 8 businesses, they're almost a bit scattergun, because they're not really the expert in what they're doing.
Yes. Well, that's the extreme. I mean, if you're experimenting with other people's money, that's obviously a different thing.
Yeah.
Now, tell me, you started in this business just before COVID, right?
Oh, yeah. I just bought it, and then that happened.
How did it feel like?
Well, the first day when we had no volume come in and no parcels, and I saw all the staff painting the bollards and sweeping the place up because there was nothing to do, I felt like jumping off a cliff, because, you know, from a business point of view, you thought, I don't know how it's going to go. But what soon happened in our industry was we were absolutely swamped with work, because in distribution, we were much like the supermarket workers, almost ignored. Everyone was like, oh, aren't the NHS doing a great job? Which they were, which was, you know, saving lives and everything. But there was a lot of other key workers in areas that never stopped and had to keep going, that have almost been taken for granted since COVID. And I think that we found ourselves in a position of going from nothing to lots and lots of volume, lots and lots of deliveries very quickly, which was a challenge for any business to get staff and training and vehicles, etc. But I've got to be very careful talking about COVID, because if I moan about it, I look at people that work in the hospitality sector or run a restaurant or run a business that was decimated and think I really shouldn't be complaining about anything, because our business was operating and was busy. And yes, there was a lot of complexities around key worker rules and distancing and everything, and, you know, should my staff have been at work risking potentially their health to make sure somebody got a trampoline delivered to their house? Probably not. We don't know what's in the boxes, unfortunately, when we're delivering them. It could be vital medical supplies, or it could be something that isn't needed. And I think that it was a period I'd never want to go back to. And I think it was a period for the country, and certainly in Scotland, that was very restrictive. But it kind of showed the business had to be quite agile and had to change and adapt quite quickly to the landscape that COVID created. And what I think's been quite sad after COVID is that delivery drivers in particular, who were delivering to everyone's houses and keeping everything going, the level of expectation and the taken for granted sort of attitude towards them is terrible. Much like I feel about when I used to go and do the shop at Tesco in Dingwall and think these people are in here every day working. Nobody really looked at them and went, "That's brilliant that they've kept going and done all this." It was it saddened me a little bit, if I'm honest.
Yeah. But again, I wouldn't be too harsh on what you said before about delivering a trampoline, because you could be helping the mental health of that family. Okay, so
the point I was trying to make is, I had certain staff saying to me, "We shouldn't be in working, this is not urgent supplies." And I'm like, well, we don't necessarily know what's in all the boxes.
Yes.
But I had to concede the point to go, I can see why you would challenge me on that.
I mean, from the outside, your industry, I would say you guys kept the economy going round and the world kept going around. Otherwise, it was a very tough time for
I think if it hadn't been for pallet networks in the UK, I think the country would have ground to a halt, is my honest truth. I think that the pallet networks in particular kept everything going. PPE, kept equipment, kept all sorts of deliveries getting into food producing places, all that kind of stuff. And I do think that it has been taken for granted by everybody.
Yes, true. So, Fraser, tell us one of the biggest challenges you've had to overcome in your career.
Wow, okay. I think it's learning about yourself is the biggest challenge, because I think that what I've realised is that as I get older, in particular, I'm 48 now, I like to work with people who've got the same values as me, because if people have got the same values as yourself, going to work's enjoyable, and you can get on with each other, and you're all trying to achieve the same thing. Before, when I was in my 20s and 30s, I was maybe more task orientated and maybe more about finding somebody that can do all the tasks. And if I didn't really get on with them, then so be it. Whereas I think now you spend so much of your time at work that the kind of values around that person and what they're all about has become more important. And I've learned that as I've got older, that, life's pretty short and cruel. You should try and enjoy it if you can, by surrounding yourself with people that are on the same mission as you.
Yeah, no, definitely. What are your aspirations, 5 years from now? Where do we like to take the business to?
Wow, that's a question that I think is very, very difficult to answer, because we've had such phenomenal growth in the last 3 years. It'd be nice to have a couple of years of just kind of steady volume, if you like, and not a massive change. It's a very difficult question to answer, because the 5-year plans and the kind of they've almost gone out the window a little bit in the last few years because of the nature of change that's happened within the industry. So I guess 5 years' time, who knows, is probably my best answer. I'd hope to have a better structured business that doesn't have such huge growths in volume all the time, that we can maybe sit back and run the business a bit more easily than having to go through such huge growth spurts. That's probably my most truthful answer on it.
Yeah. I mean, but what I'm hearing is that you've grown a lot, and you'd focus maybe more on consolidating, putting the structure maybe for the next.
I think consolidating, getting processes, training people, get the business to run less volatile in terms of new business. That would be it's been some big jumps for us, and those jumps have been exhausting.
Yes, no, that resonates. Very good, excellent. Now, Do you have a book that you've read that is wow, that had an impact in your life and you want to share with the audience?
In terms of in relation to the business or just in general?
A book.
I
Pick one.
think the business one definitely was the 1 Minute Manager with Blanchard and Johnson, because I think when I was at university, obviously a lot of the management theory books are a bit too deep and there's a bit too much going on in there to take on a useful day-to-day advice. So I liked it, and the Who Moved My Cheese that came after it, and
Yes.
I've given my management teams that normally work with me the 1 Minute Manager and said, right, read that and you'll understand what it's like to work for me. And a lot of my managers have said, wow, now that I've read that, I get what it's like to work for you. So that's probably a book that I think has been very helpful in building my teams. And also, I just found it a very simple way of understanding a lot of key things that you need to do every day.
Yeah, brilliant. That's a great book which I've also read. So and it's a
Yeah,
very thin book, very easy to read
yeah,
with great takeaways. Definitely.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, and then do you have a movie that you've watched you like?
Yeah, I think that the movie, my favourite movie is probably quite a dark movie, which is The Hustler with Paul Newman. And I
Mhm.
think that the reason was I was working in France actually at the time when I watched it, and it shows that somebody with loads of talent, how it can go wrong, and how the other forces can manipulate that person or make it difficult for them to achieve what they should achieve with their talent. And I found it a really, really quite a horrible movie, but a real insightful movie. And that, having talent's one thing, but being able to, do all the other things that are important and is just as important. And how the guy that manipulates him is not a nice guy, and he ends up winning most of the stuff in it. And yeah, it was a movie that kind of maybe woke me up. It's a good way to describe it. I think I was 19 when I watched it, but it definitely gave me an outlook on life that I went, wow, okay. And when I tell people it's my favourite film, they go, it's so dark. Why do you like it? But I think it was just a terrific film, and it had a
Yeah.
big impact on me at 19.
Okay, you talked about talents, and then I say mindset. If I say in your head, what do you think is more important, talent or mindset?
I think resilience is the most important thing. I think that what I've learned is that the ability to keep on keeping on is the most important thing you can have.
Yeah,
Obviously, you've got to have some talent, because if you don't know your sector or what you're doing, you're going to get found out. But it's like in the Rocky film. It's not how hard you can hit; it's how hard you can get hit
yeah,
that matters. And that's the biggest thing. And it's what I try and teach my kids is, if you've got resilience and you can get up and go again, that is more important than
yeah.
talent. Because I've worked with a lot of talented people, and if they don't work as hard as me, you know, that's what I would say, is that you can work hard and get up the next day, even if it's a disaster, and go again.
Yeah.
That's a real talent. That's a talent in itself.
Yes, no, definitely. You talked about, so how many kids do you have, by the way?
3.
Okay, tell us in the life work balance. Anything you want to share with us?
You're terrible as an owner of a business or an entrepreneur, because you don't spend as much time with your family as you should. You have to prioritize the business at times, which is unfortunate. You have to spend time away from home. But fortunately, I've got a wife who does all the family stuff, and really, that we kind of made a deal that she would do that and I would do the business side of things, which is an unfair deal in a lot of ways. But she's a fantastic parent, probably a far better parent than I am, and that's kind of how we've managed to make it work.
How many hours do you work a week?
Probably about 80 to
Oh,
100.
wow. Okay.
Yeah. It's a lot, and a lot of driving, a lot of going around depots and stuff. So that's the bit people don't see. They just assume that, it's easy for the owner. You're sitting there having caviar and champagne, but the reality is you're getting up at 6 in the morning and driving 3 hours to get to a depot. And then when you go into that depot, all the staff there talk to you about is their issue, and you have to listen and take it on board and deal with it. And you realise that we've actually got 17 depots that have to think about how they deal with things and whatnot. So I've learned in my career that give all your attention to the people you're with, because that's what they expect from the leader of the business, and it's a good way to be. And this type of business doesn't run itself. You have to get out and about and understand it and understand what the issues are. So I think that I spend a lot of time in the car up and down the road. It's funny because people say, oh, it must be beautiful driving around the north of Scotland. But to be honest, I'm sick of it. Do you know,
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
I don't mind going round an inner city now because
Yes.
it's so
Yes.
different from what I do. But seriously, it does take a lot of their hours, and a lot of time. Sundays are spent, you know, once my kids get down, I'll be in front of the computer and try and get a lot of work done so I can go into Monday ready for a week where I can do that week's work.
Yeah. Finally, Fraser, what would you say to what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
I think the biggest thing is have more belief in yourself. I think, like a lot of people in Scotland, you know, there's a kind of attitude here of don't get above yourself, don't think this, don't think that, you know your place. And I think that as I've got older, I've realised that, you know, you should believe in yourself a bit more, and that, you know, you do have the ability to go and do things. And yeah, I think that's the thing to tell myself, because I think with experience, I suppose, as you get older, you realise, yeah, I am all right. I do know what I'm doing. But having that self belief, it just wasn't really my personality at 18. And I think I was I was quite emotionally immature at 18. So I think that as I've got older, that's become slightly easier for me.
Yes, I think you mentioned before, it's connected to this about the regret of not having tried something.
Yeah, I mean,
Leading up to-
my grandpa was a conscripted soldier in the Second World War, and when he came back, he got wounded in France. Actually, I went back with him to Normandy 60 years later and saw where his friends were buried. It was quite an experience. But when he came back from the war, he had an opportunity to buy into a plumbing business, and he didn't take it. And he was a plumber his whole life, and he said to me, "I regret that. I should have taken it." And it kind of made me think this time I didn't want to be sitting telling my kids I'd regretted the opportunity to go into a business. So that family story and that kind of, you know, hearing it from someone else, I thought, right, okay, I don't want to have regrets at that point. Not that he regretted his life, he had a great life, but it was, I should have gone for it. And that made me probably think, okay, I'm going to go for it.
Yeah, what a great way to bring the interview to an end. On that note, Fraser, there is a phrase that goes something like, the pain of regret is always bigger than the pain of discipline.
Absolutely true.
Yeah.
That's a very, very good saying. And yeah, I would echo that. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, Fraser, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure having you on board with us today at Business Spotlight Series, and for sharing your experience and wisdom with us today. Thank you.
Lovely to speak to you, Javier. Thank you.
Thank you.